everybody, and thanks for stopping by. This is the first in a series of videos related to building Eddie Van Halen related guitars. Now, this first series is Franky with a Tom Anderson neck on it, and if you can deal with the less than professional audio, I think you'll still get a lot of good info on this guitar, on its creation, its history, and we'll go through some of the myths and speculation and everything else that is Eddie Van Halen guitars. And if you have a guitar that you want to see built, hit me up. Contact me below, leave a message, do something, and I'll get it on the list. The next series after this one is a full 5150 full relic that turned out excellent. But for right now, enjoy this series on Franky, and you'll see what it takes to build one accurately and to pull it off the best that we can. Thank you for stopping. So one of my favorite times is right now after we've sprayed the white, it's dry enough to take the tape off, and everything works out pretty good. When Eddie painted his guitars, he hung them up, or whoever helped him, hung them up straight up and down. Like straight up and down. And they went with a can, I assume a spray can, and just went back and forth while it was hanging up. When you do that, the paint shoots straight down, and the walls on the cuts, on the routs, really don't get fully covered. That's important because when you go to shoot the red, to have that kind of realistic look like Eddie's, you want that misting of the color in there, not a heavy, full-on, don't really work your spray can to get into every little angle. You want that black to show in the grain, and also underneath. You'll see that it's darker. It's darker right here where that tape was covering. And when you add layer after layer, which is, the black first, then the white, and then the red takes on a slight bit of a pinkish red hue and is far more accurate. Now, we do need to talk about what tape stays on here. And it only affects the back. So, if I go ahead and remove a few pieces, which honestly is my favorite part of doing this whole thing, you're going to see we got a little bit of misting underneath some of the tape. That's fine, not a big deal. That's just going to be cleared off with the razor. So it's not a big deal. But when you look at the parts of the back where you want to leave the tape, remember we left this little spot right here, this little guy, and we left this little guy. And that's so that after we spray the red, when we pull that up, it's a very clean seam between the exposed wood and the red top. So keeping that in mind, we have the same issue in some spots on the back. Namely this area and this area right here. So I'm going to leave this tape, well, these cutouts, the vinyl, on here. So that when I mist in here, the pink or red gets in these spots here where the white is. And when I peel this off, this will be a solid black with a little bit of the pinkish red, and same with over here. We're going to add more to it, but we want these lines to seamlessly go from black into the pink. But there's a lot of other areas that we can remove and not have to worry about that. One of the easiest things to do, it doesn't really apply to this Franky, but I mean, these pull right up. But what I was going to say is you can cut these pieces that go over the cavities, and it gives you a spot to start pulling from. And also, like the 5150 with the outside line of tape that goes all the way around the body, you can peel all that off, and it'll lift up every little piece of tape around the edge, and then you can peel everything off. So, not a big deal. So, but I'm going to leave this back pretty much the way it needs to be, which is kind of untouched. Especially this little exposed triangle here, this little elongated whatever island, this area over here and in here. That's where it's pink. Of course, this will take me 20 minutes probably, but the idea is to leave where there's pink. And if you look at this picture, if we look here, this is white, fine, but this area all through here is basically a pinkish or red. It's not a white. So if I were to remove everything, I'd have to put everything right back where it was perfectly so that I could do this. There's no point in doing all that. And that includes that area right here, which is right here. But what we're going to do is remove this tape, because that exposed black butts up underneath there. So we don't need that. We just need this little bit right here to stay. And we need this little bit in here to stay as well. When you pull up this stripe, you're going to want to cut it. So as we start, you can see I had to adjust that line or that adhesive at one point, and I'm going to just bring it back to about, I don't know, wherever it stops, about right there, and just cut it. So I'm leaving that on there because I'm going to make my job after this as easy as possible to make that work. But all the rest of the lines, let's see how this guy turned out with the exposed wood. Yeah, that'll work. We can make that work. Look how fine that line is. That black that's being exposed underneath the white. It's just what you want. That's a great way to start with what you're doing there. Now, that would be fantastic if there wasn't a piece of cut vinyl underneath it, but you get the idea what we're going for. Now here there's going to be more wear than other places, but you can see, I mean, that's the final product, but we're going to be adding more relic to this area, and it's good that you have some white spots. That's why those silhouette cuts or Cricut, whatever you use, actually work out really well, because you can add those tiny little spots that add convincing details. And we've done that all the way around. And you should not use your fingernail to pry up all this vinyl, because what it does is it ends up leaving adhesive behind. But I am my own worst enemy, and yeah, I left some vinyl adhesive in there, but I wanted you to see that. Didn't want to make you wait. So you're seeing all of this with the big ridges and everything else still included. All that gets knocked down with a razor, and we thin out parts of the white to expose some of the black underneath it. We do all that kind of stuff. We do it all here. We do it all. and the red line from the tape that you put on here crosses over right here, and you can see the full black line for this one, but this guy is covered up by the red paint some, and that's why it's longer. I used to stop these up around here, and I could never get that line right. And I figured out, oh, well, you're an idiot, because these need to go farther down. So, just one of those moments, I guess. There's certain pieces I just love when it comes off and it comes out right. And these two little guys are just that. I mean, that looks pretty accurate. I mean, that looks, for whatever Eddie did to his guitar, it looks pretty darn accurate. Even with the white that's still left there afterwards. The problem with people not using cut templates, which are available to patron supporters, is that they don't include those little gaps where the white comes through, like this area, and this area, and these little areas around this outside. So the more details like that you get in here, the more realistic it looks. Or so I tell myself. Here's my other favorite little spot right there. Something about it, just a great shape. How in the world that ever got created, I have no idea. I'm sure that would be an interesting story to hear about. I tell you, use this template system, people will think you're amazing. Maybe you are. Maybe you are amazing. Maybe you're absolutely amazing. I don't know. I'm not, so I had to develop this whole kind of system myself. Oh, there is one spot on the back, on the front. Sorry. This little guy right here, I call it the tuning fork. And I don't even know if you can see it, but see that little guy right there? I don't know if I can. This little piece right here. I want to leave that on there. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you when we do the red. So all these pieces, I think they fit on 4 sheets of vinyl. The vinyl comes in 12 by 12 sheets. So it's already made up for it to work just right. And it does. Now, I need to stock up on naphtha. I have very little left. So as soon as I'm done removing all this, I'm going to have to go get some. I'm going to get some. Giggity. So realistic is the name of the game. Well, really, I guess it'd be called creating a Franky, but you know what I'm talking about. And you know what I'm talking about. So even though there's some black left here, the black over along this white edge is real narrow. It's perfect. That's fine. We're going to remove that. I kind of make these narrow so that I can adjust them later when I take a razor to them. And that amber tone under the epoxy looks just right. If I was doing a 2005 version, I would have added some brown to it. There's a couple areas I did not do exposed wood because I do it after I remove from this step. And I do that on purpose. There's some exposed wood in there, and I just don't want to do it yet because I got to remove epoxy or adhesive and get things lined up. And there's all your little. And that's the extent that I do right there. There's lots of tiny little black spots. And we're going to get to that after all the adhesive is removed. But there's no point in doing that right now. And I leave that little tuning fork. So we got tuning fork, round divot, and a little low E pointer, whatever you want to call it. I can start to feel my fingernail separate from my skin. That's when you know you're doing a good job. There's those pieces. Yep. Another hard one to get lined up. I used to have a problem with this area. And then I kind of figured out a way to do it. Let's see how this came out. Not to brag, but that's effing perfect right there, with just a little bit of that black showing on the back side of the exposed wood. I'm happy with that. Happy. And what we're going to do is use the edge of, I'll do it right now. I'm going to do the edge of a razor and connect this black line. It's very faint and very narrow. And I don't do it with the cutouts, because you really can't get a line that fine with the silhouette. I mean, you could, but getting it down and putting it where you want and all that kind of stuff would be a major hassle. And I know that I can come in with a razor and just take a couple seconds and do it. So still got a few pieces to remove. I'll get to that. All right, so all the tiny little pieces that I buried in here under paint have been removed. At this point, got to get to, well, I got to get some more stuff to remove the adhesive. Which is Gooby Gone, otherwise known as naphtha. So that's going to take some time. And the ridges on the white are pretty high because it takes a lot of white to bury that black underneath there. So I've already showed you how to do all the naphtha and getting the adhesive off. So that's going to be the next stage. I'm not gonna shoot that probably. And what I'll do is once I get that cleaned up, I'll come back and then we'll start doing the razor work. Which, you know, really, you know, when you remove it, I mean, that's one swipe over this area. And some of this we're going to have to really thin out, because if you look at the real Franky, you can see right through the white, and you'll see how it's getting thinner and thinner. And we're just going to slowly just go back and forth with that till that white is thinned out. And when you start getting these little lines where the black is showing, you're starting to replicate what the real Franky looks like. Because it's got a lot of little lines that are showing. And I really haven't done much work on this to replicate, you know, this wear here. I mean, that was cut out from Silhouette. The waviness of these lines, that was Silhouette. So the trick is to get everything down where it needs to be and make sure that the exposed wood is lined up before you do all that stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed this so far. Again, patron members can, or patron donors can have access to all these files and really crank out some Frankies. Do some cool color combinations. You know, do the matte black on black, or do that silver and black. Silver, black, and red looks great. Yellow, black, and red looks great. Black and yellow with silver looks great at the top up here. And you're probably familiar with that epoxy with the metal in it that ended up over here. That's what that shape is from on top of the red. That couple glops of that dark gray epoxy. I used to think that this piece right here was also dark gray epoxy, and it's not. It turns out to be a very, very deep burn. Like somebody just held a cigarette there and just let that thing crackle and burn. I don't know what the story is behind it, but that's what it is. So we're going to do that. And remember, this is going to be the 1982, lots of tiny little things that we got to do on here, and I'm looking forward to it. So this is turning out nice. I'm quite happy with it. So